What's up, y'all? It's the girl, Stacy the Intuitive. Welcome back to my channel. So today I really wanted to come and talk to you guys about a very important topic, and it has to do with the collective abandonment wound. It has to do with abandonment in general and how it honestly may be stopping you from reaching your highest potential, being your best self. And we're gonna rewrite the abandonment wound here today and kind of give some healing information that's gonna help you to transform that, transmute that into something super powerful. Now, we all probably know it kind of goes without speaking, but the abandonment wound talks about kind of this fear of being left behind, this fear of being, abandoned, essentially, of being left out in the cold type of energy. And really, the root of this wound is lacking acceptance. It's this feeling of not being accepted, of not being wanted, and all these things. And this came up for me recently, just this feeling of like this abandonment wound and how it felt. And it really did have to do with this feeling of feeling like not belonging and all this stuff. And I've worked so hard to really build this sense of individuality, the sense of self, but I wasn't aware of like the little areas that I was still like kind of living out this abandonment wound and like really wanting to fit in or to belong in certain spaces, regardless of whether or not they appreciated me as an individual, right? And this is something that we all, I think that this is a collective wound because it has a lot to do with just the natural progression of an individual as we go from, being bonded to our family, to our mother, to our parents, to individuals. And a lot of the time, the kind of transition from that bonded state to individuality gets very muggled up. The transition is not as smooth and we don't get as much guidance as we might need. So if you're someone who kind of is living with these notions, even if it's kind of on a subconscious level, this is going to be very helpful for you because it's really just about reframing that abandonment wound and really empowering the self. So let's just really get into it. Now, the abandonment wound, guys. A lot of the time, the abandonment wound makes us find ourselves in places where we don't belong, where we won't be finding our highest potential, our highest selves in these circumstances. We won't be we won't be in circumstances where, everybody resonates with us or whatever. And it's not always about resonance, but sometimes it's just about having the authority, the sense of comfort to show up as yourself. And so that's where the abandonment wound will show up specifically, is when you find that you're in circumstances that you would rather be in than be left behind from, right? And then that abandonment wound can be triggered when you feel rejected, when you feel all these things, when you don't feel accepted, when you feel left out in the cold, and whatever have you. And the abandonment wound is very contradictory because it kind of gives this notion that the individual is not good enough, right? Because it's not being accepted into a group, it's not being accepted into a place, it's not being accepted by a person. It gives this notion that the person isn't good enough or whatever have you. And that's just completely the opposite of the truth. But the framing of it is I've been rejected, I'm not wanted, all these things, right? Especially like in the times when we are children and, we're navigating with our parents and stuff like that or whatever, and we're wanting to be accepted by our parents, we're wanting to feel approval by our parents, whether they're in your life or not, or even just like with the people that you're surrounded by on a daily, like you're wanting that sense of acceptance. And then we have these little moments where like versions of ourselves come out that maybe are not accepted at the time. For me, this is like when I was younger and I first started liking boys, and it's like this is not accepted at the time or whatever. And it's like this part of you is being rejected from a very young age or just early in life, right? And so now we learn to be like, okay, I need to change this part of me. I need to mask this part of me, hide this part of me in order to be accepted. And now it creates this notion that acceptance is better, being on the in is better, and being on the outs is worse, which is not true. Because in those moments, and especially if you are on this like healing, ascension, self-development journey, the most important thing to you is gaining authenticity. And so for me, this had been completely contradictory to how I choose to live. So like when I was being triggered in this when I was being triggered in this way, I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, why am I being triggered like this? Um, and it's really just this need to realize like what it's really hitting in you. It's this version of you that like wants to be accepted and is not being accepted. Now the abandonment wound again is so interesting because in that act of trying to avoid being abandoned externally, you then abandon yourself internally. How crazy is that, right? So the way that I thought of it is just like what I visualized when I thought of this was like a group of people versus you standing here and you deciding, oh my God, I need to be a part of this group. But it's like the essence of you maintains over here. It's like the essence version of you. And then like the version that you're embodying goes over there. And this version of you that's within your essence that is on the outskirts of this group, just naturally and honestly, that doesn't fit into this group or whatever, that's the version of you that you have to leave behind. But there's this energy of wanting to belong that becomes even more important than being with the self. So that's kind of how I visualized it. It's like think of it as like the ghost of you, right? Staying right here, but it's not really a ghost. It's like the essence, like, you know, and then there's like that embodied version of you that decides to be in that group. So, very interesting notion there, because when we abandon ourselves to fit into a group, we honestly lose all of our power. And that's where we're getting into the talk of the empowerment of individuality. You know, when being on the in is not the thing that's empowering, actually being on the out is. We lose our power because we oftentimes find that when we're not in these accepted spaces, that first of all, we're not accepting ourselves, and we feel less than, because a lot of the time, even if it's one person, right? Um, if something if inclusivity at times is based on keeping other people out, it can begin to make the people that are kept out feel away, marginalized, whatever have you. And so with that, there's this energy of losing that empowered state. But what I have recently had this transformation of, and this understanding will help you to not feel that way when you find yourself not accepting spaces, is that power comes when there can be this whole group over here and there's just you, and you stand in your truth regardless, right? That is when power comes. There is power in that singularity. There is power in being abandoned. There is power in being left behind. How crazy is that? You know, that we would think that belonging and things are the most beautiful, are, you know, the most privileged things that we can experience, when the truth of the matter is not needing to belong is the most empowering state to be in. Accepting individuality is the most empowered state to be in. So now if you're experiencing this with a partner or something like that, it's like you want to belong with that person, but what if you can just accept that this is me and I don't have to go outside of that to be with you, and I can accept you for who you are? I believe that you have just empowered yourself above all of that, because now your empowerment comes on recognizing power within others, whereas this power comes upon rejecting others or whatever have you, or not accepting others. So this wound is very collective, because again, a lot of collectivity is created around this notion of creating groups of mindsets and groups of people doing things and whatever have you, and being a certain way and all of that. But the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves is get away from that and prioritize individuality, prioritize what it means to be autonomous and sovereign and empowered within the self, right? So whenever you find yourself in these circumstances where you're kind of feeling triggered by this abandonment wound, the best thing that you can do is find that authenticity, find that sense of self, so that you're not abandoning yourself. Because every time that you do abandon yourself for something else, you've just lost that part of you that actually makes you valuable. And so you're gonna feel like a hollowed out version of yourself, because there was this sense of thinking that going here would make you feel like you belonged, but now you don't even resonate with the reason that you're belonging. Does that make sense? Like, how can I go to a place to feel like I belong when I don't even resonate with what I'm belonging over? I'm saying like, oh my God, all these people are so tall and I resonate with them over that. Well, I want to belong in that group, but I'm not tall. And now I'm in this group and I stick out like a sore thumb because I don't even resonate with what I'm trying to belong with you guys because of. So there's this huge notion about needing to heal this so that you don't find yourself chasing circumstances. We talked about chasing in one of my recent videos. Go ahead and watch that if you would like on YouTube, SAC the Intuitive. But you don't want to find yourself chasing things, because the moment that you stand in your power is the moment that you start to magnetize things that resonate with you. But the moment that you then, don't stand in your power and you stand in other groups, now you're magnetizing things that don't resonate with you. Now you're magnetizing things that reject the other version of you, and that cause you to kind of implement this sense of self-hatred, because now you have to turn your back on that version of you that you abandoned in order to continue fitting in. So I really wanted to share that because it just felt very important when I was having this epiphany. I really wanted to come here and just relay this message to everyone, because I do think that this abandonment wound is such a huge thing that plagues so many of us and gets us to step outside of ourselves, because we don't know how to function in such a way that empowers the self, right? You want this sense of belonging, but there's this beautiful sense of belonging like no other when you stand in your own truth. Right? There's not power in numbers like we're told quite often, their strength and singularity, in my opinion. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Let's continue to have this conversation in the comments and everything. And please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube and my TikTok. I will see you guys next time. Bye.